all of you like the story, right? And it's disappointing. Group 1 said, the best part is the final part. Does it make sense? Yes, that's true, but Group 2, it is a conventional story, conventional, not conventional, unconventional. So you like it because it's unconventional?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Group 3? Group 3? All of you like this story because of some words are repeated? And Group 4? You like this story because there are many rhetorical devices, but you do not discuss them, right? So it's funny, right? You spent a whole day reading the story, and these are the most interesting part for you? Maybe, right? Okay. I find some of the homeworks are very interesting, and the best essay, probably the best writing, best piece is by, I think, Park Jin-hee, right? The reason is simple, quite simple, because it seems to me, she wrote it without recourse to any secondary source, right? Many of you go to the secondary source before you read the story itself. But what is important, you have to read the story without going to any other critics' comments on it. Okay? Park Jin-hee, did you read it without recourse to critics? And this story, this essay is very interesting because of that. Okay? I'm going to read it. Analysis of Pit and Pendulum. The short story, Pit and Pendulum, keeps readers in agitation from the beginning to the end. Poe uses a lot of sensory expressions to describe the smell, sound, horror, and hunger the protagonist is experiencing. While the main character swoons, loses consciousness, and then regains sanity, the readers are following him closely with the detailed descriptions of his sensations provided by the author. Without being fully aware of the situation the protagonist is in, both the protagonist and the reader hold their breath in anticipation of what would follow. I was very impressed by the author's skillful technique in maintaining suspense by giving a brief moment of relief, which is then destroyed soon in light of newly revealed terror. For example, both the protagonist and the readers are relieved to find out the prison is roughly 100 paces around, but they are soon terrified by realizing the existence of the pit. The continuous alteration between relief and terror make the story even more intense and compelling. What do you think? This is good. First observation, good. And this time, Sarah and Annabelle did well. I think this is Sarah's essay, the second part, Pit and Pendulum review. I like the story's narration, as I'm a big fan of Poe's work. His specialty is the macabre. His specialty in the macabre has been something that's intrigued me for some time. His work is influential and particularly singular in its dark and gruesome nature. Poe was the father of modern suspense and detective literature, a household name for the modern horror genre. His ability to weave frightening tales of awe and suffering is admirable. He created memorable, well-crafted pieces, despite living such a hard, short life. Sure, he died at age 40. And Annabelle, I don't think she relied on anything else but the story itself. And this is her feeling, impression. The Pit and Pendulum is a story in the horror genre. It has multiple themes. Two of these themes are death and fear. It's about death because it's on the narrator's mind from the first line to the last line. I believe the story is also about fear because when reading it, it gives me goosebumps and it made me shiver at times. The way the story is written only makes it easier for me to start thinking about what I do in the narrator's position, and that was rather frightening. I do like how much the way the story is written affected how I felt reading it. So while reading it, I had enjoyed it. And Yoon So-yeon? Paul wants everyone reading The Pit and Pendulum to feel what the narrator feels. Considering the things he feels, fear, terror, horror, etc., it's no wonder that our author has to resort to some drastic measures. Paul relies heavily on rhetorical tricks in order to bring the message home and strike terror into our hearts. What do we mean by rhetorical? Well, in this case, it refers to several writing devices intended to keep us reading and build tension. Chief among these tools is repetition. It's there. From the first line, I was sick unto death, with a long agony. By doubly emphasizing sick, Poe makes it very clear that our narrator isn't feeling very well. It also allows him to modify it, to give it more power, when he adds that phrase, unto death. Well, we know exactly how bad he's feeling. Actually, Yoon So-yeon said several devices, but just mentioned one thing, right? Okay, let's go to the story itself, and it's fascinating. Okay, the handout. Poe is a poet novelist known for detective fiction and science fiction as well. He was the first writer in America who tried to make a living by only writing. He dealt with various genres, subjects, horror stories, satires, humor tales. His recurring theme is death in every aspect: physical condition, psychology, premature burial, the reanimation of the dead, like Shelley's stories, and the mourning. He was interested in cryptography. Based on this, he wrote a novel, right? And physics and cosmology. It's surprising. His prose work, right? Eureka, a prose poem, an essay published in 1848, is a cosmological theory, which was about 80 years ahead of Big Bang theory. Great, right? He was not a physicist, but he talked about it. And the story, Pit and Pendulum. It is 21-story page story. We can finish it in one sitting, which is meaningful. The length of the story should be short enough to finish it in one sitting, right? It's his story. The story differs from conventional fiction. Neither the narrator's name is known, nor why and how he's become a prisoner. It's not about a character, but a fiction about human condition. That is to say, the pit and the pendulum, right? The first thing the narrator talks about the pit and then the pendulum, right? And then he is saved, right? From Poe just uses history to tell a story of man facing tortures and death. It is not about one person, but about all encountering death. We become one with the narrator while reading the story. The style in it perfects his story. Man is death and fear of death. Okay, the plot. One of the students said, this is the plot, right? It follows the time, the consciousness, right? The story is about the prisoner of the Spanish Inquisition, but it's just a pretext to reveal human mind, right? Human psychology. in face of death, right? It makes full use of senses, in particular sound, to inspire fear in man in a pitch-dark cell. Each style mimics the psychology and pain of a man in the adverse conditions condemned to death. It deals with the birth time of the prisoner's awakening in a compartment through general scratching of the arm of the prisoner falling into the pit. Historical background. The Spanish Inquisition, the tribunal of the Holy Office of the Inquisition, was set up in 1480 and abolished in 1834. The Catholic monarchs, Ferdinand II of Aragon and Isabel I of Castile, established it to maintain the Catholic orthodoxy of the newly converted, mostly from Judaism and Islam. About 150,000 people were charged with crimes, and about 3,000 were executed by the Inquisition. Style. The first-person narrator, repetition, typographical writing, keywords, frequent use of dash, use of semicolon, consciousness and psychology, conditions of being human, imagination, human interests and needs, fear of death, scientific observations, many things, right? You capture all of these. At each moment. It follows the consciousness, right, from the awakening in the cell, and then until he is saved, right? Okay, let's go to the story, page 8. Okay, page 5. I was sick. I was is in capital big letters, was. In the middle, revolution, big letters, and also on page 8, madness, M-A-D-N-E-S-S, madness, and on page 9, nothingness, nothing, and page 10, tomb, T-O-M-B, tomb, and page 14, sudden, and page 17, descended, meaning the pendulum, right? And hissed, the swinging of the pendulum, hissed. And page 18, the peat, right? And page 19, here. And page 20, you see second paragraph, down, dash, down, dash, down. Very interesting, right? And page 21, save in the path of the destroying crescent, right? Unfortunately, the edge of the sharp edge of the pendulum does not pass through the bandage, right? Right, the notch. Instead, it's supposed to cut its breast, right? So save, except, right? Save of the destroying crescent. Unique thought, hope, right? A lot of big letters. Hope, thought, unique. Save in the path of the destroying crescent. And page 23, still, S-T-I-L-L, and free, and I was free. Next page, huh? I was free. And page 25, unreal. And in the same paragraph, toward the end, you see many O's. Right? O, right? O dash, right? I like it, right? And finally, on page 26, into the pit. And the final sentence is interesting. The Inquisition was in the hands of his enemies. The Inquisition was in the hands of his enemies. Toledo. Okay. Page 5 to 6, right? I awaken it. The narrator is I. I recall the immediate past before I swooned. Pages 6 to 8, motion and sound come back to me, right? Page 8. On page 5, the first paragraph, you can see you can understand the style, right? Okay. I was sick unto death, repetition, right? I was sick unto death with long agony. And when they at length bound me, I was permitted to sit. My senses were leaving me. The sentence, the dread sentence of death, again, repetition. The dread sentence of death was the last of distinct accentuation which reached my ears. So hearing, right? After that, the sound of the inquisitorial voices, meaning the judges, right? The inquisitors, judges, horrible judges. The sound of the inquisitorial voices seemed merged in one dreamy, indeterminate hum of you, the judges, right? It conveyed to my soul the idea of revolution, perhaps from its association in fancy with the burr of a mill well. Revolution means what? Turning, right? A burr, mill well. This only for a brief period. Okay, no verb, right? This only for a brief period. For presently, I had no more. Yet, for a while, I saw, but with how terrible an exaggeration, repetition, right? Parenthetic, right? I saw the lips of the black-robed judges. Also, in the middle, he is going to use the big rat, to get himself free by letting him his bondage cut by the rats, right? And swarms of rats, licks his lips, right? They kissed him, right? So here again, saw the lips of the black-robed judges. They appeared to me whiter than the sheet upon which I traced these words, and even to grotesqueness, thin with the intensity of their expression of firmness, of immovable resolution, of stern contempt of human torture. I saw that the decrees of what to me was fate were still issuing from those lips. So focus, right? Sight. They are giving judgment, right? He remembers the lips. I saw them writhe with a deadly locution, judgment, right? I saw them fashion the syllables of my name. Shakespearean, right? My name, right? Edgar Allan Poe, right? Not his name, probably, of my name, and I shuddered because no sound succeeded. I saw too, for a few moments of delirious horror, the soft and nearly imperceptible waving of the sable drapers, which enwrapped the walls of the apartment, and then my vision fell upon the 7 tall candles upon the table. So he's recalling the court, right? Tribunal. At first, they were the aspect of charity and seemed white, slender angels who would save me. But then, all at once, there came most deadly nausea of my spirit, and I felt every fiber in my frame thrill, as if I had touched the wire of a galvanic battery. Fantastic, right? If you touch it, what happens? While the angel forms became meaningless specters with hands of flame, I saw that from them there would be no help. Then there stole into my fancy, like a rich musical note, the thought of what sweet rest there must be in the grave. The thought came gently and stealthily, and it seemed long before it attained full appreciation. But as my spirit came at length properly to feel and entertain it, the figures of the judges vanished, as if magically, from before me. The tall candles sank into nothingness. Their flames went out utterly. The blackness of darkness superended. All sensations appeared swallowed up in a mad rushing, the rushing descent of the soul into haze, then silence, and stillness, and night were the universe. Fantastic. Right? And all of this is what? He has just recalled, right? Notice the tense. What is it? Past perfect tense, right? What had happened? I had swooned, right? Before I awakened, I had swooned, right? So I had swooned, but still will not see that all of consciousness was not lost. What of it there remained? I will not attempt to define or even to describe, yet all was not lost. So that's why he remembers it, right? And yet all was not lost. In the deepest slumber, no. In the delirium, no. In a swoon, no. In death, no. Even in the grave, all was not lost. Fantastic. More and more intensified, right? No, right? So, yet all was not lost. In the deepest slumber, no. In the delirium, no. In a swoon, no. In death, no. Right? Even in the grave, all was not lost. Else, there is no immortality for man. Fantastic, right? There is no immortality for man if there is all these lost, right? And also, there is arousing from the most profound of slumbers, we break the gossamer web of some dream. Break the gossamer web of some dream. Poetic. He's a poet. Basically, he's a poet, right? Yet, in a second afterwards, so frail may that web have been. Remember, not that we have dreamed. In the return to life from swoon, there are two stages. Actually, it's a colon, but Paul misused it. Semicolon, right? I see a few mistakes here, but instead of semicolon, colon is correct. First, that of the sense of mental or spiritual. Secondly, that of the sense of physical existence. It seems probable that if, upon reaching the second stage, we could recall the impressions of the first, we should find these impressions eloquent in the memories of the gulf beyond. And the gulf is, that gulf is what? And things like that. And I will skip a few, 5 sentences. He who has never swooned is not he who finds strange palaces and wild familiar faces in cold that glow. Is not he who beholds floating in midair the sad visions that the many may not view. Is not he who ponders over the perfume of some novel flower. Is not he whose brain grows bewildered with the meaning of some musical cadence which has never before rushed his attention. Very beautiful. It's who. He who is who. Page 11, page 10, last paragraph. My outstretched hands at length encountered some solid obstruction. He is bound, right? So it was a wall seemingly of stone masonry, dash, right? Very smooth, slimy, cold. I followed it up, stepping with all the careful distrust with which certain antique narratives had inspired me. The process, however, afforded me no means of ascertaining the dimensions of my dungeon. Human interest, right? He's interested in trifles. People tend to be interested in trifles, right? If I give you a homework, you have to do homework right now. You have only 1.5 hours. Still, you are interested in trifles. You go through the internet, surfing the internet, things like that. I do the same thing. So it's a human nature, trifles. We are interested in trifles, right? Okay, and page 11, last paragraph. Upon awaking and stretching forth an arm, I found beside me a loaf and pitcher with water. So he devoured it. Right? He is going to measure the room by walking. Right? The starting point is what? He puts the ham, right? Right? And he begins work. But how many paces are there? 100 paces, right? 100 paces after all, right? But what happened? What had happened is what? When he almost finished measuring, he fell. He fell asleep. He fell and fell asleep, right? So the measurement was wrong, right? Twice as big as the actual size, right? Circumference. Page 14, last paragraph. Any size I had been greatly mistaken. So there was an explanation. And again, he almost fell into the pit, but by mistake he fell. He was saved, right? And then he looked at the ceiling and found the pendulum, huge pendulum. At first he had thought it's just a picture, but it's a real pendulum. What's more, it's coming down slowly, right? Imperceptibly. And there are very good parts in it, but I'll skip. Page 19. First paragraph. Third sentence. Upon my recovery too, I felt very, inexpressibly sick and weak. As if through some inundation. Even amid the agonies of that period, the human nature craved food. With painful effort, I outstretched my left arm as far as my bonds permitted and took possession of the small remnant which had been spared me by the rats. As I put a portion of it within my lips, there rushed to mind the half-formed thought of joy, of hope. What is it? What is joy of hope? What is it? He has an idea. He suddenly he comes to have an idea how to save himself, right? So this is fantastic. Joy dash of hope. Yet, what business had I with hope? It was, as I say, a half-formed thought. A man has many such, which were never completed. I felt it was of joy, of hope, but I felt also that it had perished in its formation. In vain, I struggled to perfect, to regain it. Long suffering had nearly annihilated all my ordinary powers of mind. I was an imbecile, an idiot. Still, he had an idea, right? And the same thing happens, page 23. 23, the first paragraph. Half of that idea, deliverance to which I have previously alluded, and of which a moiety, half, meaning half, only floated indeterminately through my brain when I raised food to my burning ribs. The whole thought was now present. So it becomes clear, right? He has a clear idea. The whole thought was now present. Feeble, scarcely sane, scarcely definite, but still entire. What is it? He's going to feed the rats, right? Feed the rats. What? Food. Right? So the next is how we do it. And the room becomes smaller and smaller, right? And finally, he was on the point of falling, and the eighth arm reaches out and catches him. He's saved. This is the end of the story. Wonderful story. What do you think? The whole process, from the awakening to the saving by being caught by the arm of a LaSalle, General LaSalle, right? Fantastic. Okay, your homework.